Hello, and welcome back to our special book talk series about the International Dublin Writers' Festival. For those of you joining for the first time, I'm Sabrina, and I'll be hosting this mini-series and giving you a sneak peek into the festival events we have lined up for September. Today, I am so excited to introduce Jane Buckley. Welcome, and thank you so much for being here today. For our audience, Jane is one of our special guest speakers at the festival this year, and she's going to share a little bit about herself and the projects that she'll be speaking about at the festival. So, Jane, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, where you're from, if you have any favorite books or books that you've been loving at the moment? I want to hear it all.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you for the opportunity, Sabrina. This is amazing. I'm very excited, terrified at the same time, but really looking forward to talking about my experiences over the last number of years. I am what you would call an original Derry girl. I'm sure you've heard of Derry girls. So I was born in Derry during the Troubles. I left Derry at the tender age of 17, which is unbelievable when I think about it. And I went to London and I spent probably over 30 odd years in London. Met my husband John, who was born in Cork, who's another Irishman.
Mm-hmm.
And as part of my travels, I did travel, fortunately, all over the world. And my frustration was a lot of people really didn't understand the history or the reason the Trouble started. They were very selective in what they read and listened to.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came back home, I felt it was important to tell a story through fiction of what my own experiences of growing up, as a young teenager in the 70s and 80s, what it was like. And the means was really to educate the younger generation of today, to help them understand why the Trouble started, why they lasted so long, but through a story. Mm-hmm. Rather than a factual, there's been some amazing books written, journalistic books and things written about the Troubles. And when you ask me what I've been reading of late, I have been doing so much research that I haven't had the chance to sit and read a good old romantic book with a happy ever after ending. So primarily that's what I've been doing. I've just decided to write originally one book, and I'm on the final book.
Oh, wow.
Stones Corner is actually a place in the city of Derry where the rioters used to meet and congregate after they've had their dinner, if it was a summer night, and they would have the armory ready. They break up the pavements and have the armory ready for a good old riot. I know it sounds almost comical, but it is actually quite true. So there was a place called Stones Corner, and I decided that over 30 years you couldn't do or tell the story the right way over one book. So it went into two, went into three, and I'm finishing it this year with Stones Corner Hope, which mm-hmm. is taking us to the ceasefire in 1994.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, that's I'm so excited to be talking to you because I've been super interested in the Troubles, and as someone coming from the outside, the Troubles are still really relevant and especially painful, and I feel like sometimes people aren't willing to either talk about it or share I don't know, a full picture of what it was. So I think the work you're doing is really important, and I like the way that you're doing it because a story can really capture people.
Oh, absolutely. And then you've got everything that there is in a good thriller, and believe me, there was no shortage of concepts and ideas, the amount of awful things that did happen, but there's been a lot of good in there as well. And I think it's got the love element in it. I've been told, and I've tried really hard to be as unbiased as I possibly can be. So it's telling the story from each community. It's telling the story from a young British soldier who joined the army, who finds himself what he regards in as part of the United Kingdom. And it talks about how he evolved, his opinion changes, and why his confusion of being hated so. And it's really got everything in it. But you talk about people not wanting to talk about the Troubles. I mean, when I first wrote the book, probably the first draft, and it's funny when you read a book and when I look at the first draft, you think, oh my God. but
it's always that way.
I spent probably about a year, 18 months, sending out like every writer author does. I sent it out to so many agents, blah, blah, blah. And in the end, I got quite a strong worded memo coming back from quite a big agency in London saying, never will have anything to do with the Troubles. So yeah, so I thought,
Okay.
well, okay, that's okay. So as a result of that, I'm not getting any younger. I went down the self-publishing route,
Mhm.
which, my goodness, has been an experience.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been good and bad, but and I've learned so much. So really, what I wanted to do, which I believe is what I'm hoping to talk about, is just make my story fun in terms of my self-publishing journey, because there's
Mhm.
been some dire moments when I've been, it's like anything in life, you learn through your
Yeah.
mistakes, don't you? So I'd really like to share my mistakes in a sort of, in a fun but positive way, and then talk about the good things. So, because I think, I'm on to 4 books, and that's within, it'll be 2 years, I think, well, 21, 2 years, 3 years already, and that was in 2 years, and then this one this year. So I've written 4 big meaty books, 136,000 word books in sort of 2.5 years. So I've
That's
learned
so
fast.
impressive.
It's terrifying and it's exhausting, and I'm a bit of a, once I start something, I have to just get it done, because I'm being kept awake at night with these voices
Oh,
asking me, what's going to happen to me. So that's why I'm hiding here in my mobile home in Donegal, trying
so
to get sleep.
that's trying to get some sleep. Well, that's really interesting because I was gonna ask about your process, and I mean, you've
Yeah,
already kind of hinted at that, like you're doing some like isolation to just get it
yeah,
done. Are
yeah.
there like what does writing look like to you? Like, what's that experience been, especially since you've just been like grinding it out for the past few years?
Yeah, I mean, if you could see my desk here, I try. I'm actually quite regimented. I'm pretty good, I tend to, because I've worked all my life, I tend to take this, this is now my career. So I'm quite happy to, set aside at least 5 or 6 hours a day just to write. And
Mhm.
I, and I've heard this numerous times, people talk about the writing process. It is tiring, it is exhausting, but it's where the joy comes from. It's where the ideas come from, and you're never not thinking about concepts or plots or whatever. So at the moment, I'm totally focused on the writing, because as an indie author, you've got to think of right across the board. You've got to think of your marketing. You've got to think of your blurb. You've got to think of the covers and listening. I mean, there are so many amazing podcasts out there giving. There is actually almost too much information out there at the moment. Where I was in London last week for the self-publishing show. Mark Dawson self-publishing. Mark Dawson. And it was information hitting me from every direction, but some of that stuff, if you just get 1 or 2 nuggets, it's fantastic. So
Mhm.
really, when I'm writing the books, I try and switch off from that so I can totally focus. And I tend to aim to write at least 2,500 words a day. And my advice again would be just blurb it out. Just get it out of your system. You've got the wonderful opportunity of being able to go back and re-edit it and edit it and edit it. But you have to, and then, I'd be intrigued from you talking to other authors is, you know, every time I read something that I've written, one or the other, I want to change it. It's never perfect. You just want to change it. So you've got to get into this mindset where you think, well, you know what? People are buying the books as they are. They're giving you cracking reviews. I won the Indie Award for it. So why go back and change it? Be kind to yourself, accept that you've done your utmost, you've done your best. So I guess, again, that's one of the things I want to try and encourage people to do when I'm at the festival.
Yeah, no, that is such an important message. And like, as someone who I'm a literature major, I do a lot of writing myself. Think I have I don't think being an author is in the cards for me, but when I do have to write my essays, like the two things that I have to tell myself are you can't change something that doesn't exist yet, and
Yeah,
it's never going to be 100% ready.
yeah,
It can just be the way that it is, and you've
yeah.
done your best.
Yeah. But we are our worst enemies. We are our own worst enemies. And again, one of the speakers last week was sort of saying, nothing is ever going to be perfect. You'll never get it perfect. You're never going to please everybody. So it's
Yeah.
not just the creative aspect of starting to write. I mean, I've always been a reader, but I've never been a writer. And just, you know, your style changes, obviously. The more you write, probably the more polished you are. But then someone pointed out to me, you know, when you look at my first book, you know, I could find so many frustrating things that I'd love to change, but the passion's there because you're excited, and readers pick up that passion. They don't really, I don't believe, care whether you use 8 or 9 words. They want to feel that passion that you feel when you're writing it. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think I'll ever stop learning in this game. I really don't.
Yeah. No, that's, yeah, like everyone is always evolving, and you just have to like keep evolving and keep pushing yourself.
Yeah.
Well, okay, now I'm dying to ask. I have to ask, have you seen the show Derry Girls? I'm sure you get this.
Oh gosh, yeah. And you know what? And you know, Lisa McGee has done she's just done our city so much justice. I mean, I love I love Derry. I am very proud of Derry. We have evolved and come on so far. You know, when I think about when I left when I was 17, it was a war zone. It truly was. There, you know, it was black, white, grey. It was depressing. But you know, through her writing, she's brought, and the Derry humor is there. I mean, we have got a real dry sense of humor, you know, from little things like, which I've actually included quite, you know, purely coincidentally, you know, the moments with the wooden spoon and the, you know, the whitewash, the dark wash, and all the little innuendos that are being said and done. And I did cringe a little bit when I first watched it, because I thought it's such a diverse sort of script. And you know, will people actually get this? Will they get this sort of, you know, the little black humor that's in the background, you know, based again on around the troubles? But I honestly say this with hand on heart, she did what I loved about it. It was she completed that, she finished that series at the right time and absolutely in the right way. I mean, I've got goosebumps just thinking of that you know, one of those scenes when they're dancing around the walls, and you know, it really is incredibly emotive. So, you know, well done. You know, it's just she's just done brilliantly. So yeah, I did watch it the whole way through.
Well, I guess staying with Derry in your research, because I bet you've done a lot of like you experienced it, but you said you've done a lot of research also. Have you discovered anything that you weren't sure, like that you didn't think you'd find?
No, I mean, I think, well, the one message and the one thing that's actually quite heartbreaking is when I was growing up. I mean, the first chapter in the first book was from from my own experience when our house was regularly raided by the British Army. You know, and then obviously for fictional purposes, you know, it comes from my own experience, but from having friends, you know, again, whose homes were regularly raided, you know, it's incredibly hard hitting. But I think one of the things is when I was growing up, I did a lot of competitive swimming. So I was very focused on the swimming. So in a way, I feel almost, you know, almost ashamed in a sense that from doing the research that I've done, I really had no concept of just how awful it really was for a lot of people, and some of the horrific things that occurred, you know, from, you know, not just in Derry, but in Belfast, you know, people having to leave their homes, you know, even the last book. And it's funny because the first book was called Turmoil, which starts in 1972, just after the Bloody Sunday and Ballymurphy. And then you have Darkness, which was 1975. And that was, again, a very dark year. And then Light is sort of around the early 1980s. And that would have been around the hunger strike and the dirty protest. And I've read and listened to a lot of the prisoners from, you know, from both sides, their experiences of being on the blanket for 5 years and some of the things that happened to them. And truly, it's been overwhelmingly sad and unbelievable that this was happening. And I was in London, and quite frankly, you didn't hear this side of the story. So I think what I've learned mostly is that a lot of what happened and what went on, you know, people outside of the North or outside of Northern Ireland really had no grasp or true understanding of actually what was happening, you know, so close to the, you know, to the mainland. So it's been heart-wrenching, actually, you know. And I think my message and my belief and my passion is, given that we're in stalemate at the moment here in the North, you know, we really should, you know, we should never forget, but we have to move on. But we should never allow ourselves to still have that mindset that awful inherent hatred from one community to the other. So that is probably my biggest learning. And I still find it very, very heartbreaking and depressing.
Yeah. No, I can imagine that, like, doing that kind of deep dive, like it's into your own past, but it's also into a past that's just kind of like rich doesn't even cover it in terms of, like, I guess potent is the word, just like there's so much there. But
Yeah.
I mean, again, I'm so glad that you're writing it and sharing about it. I think that's, I don't know, I think it's what needs to be done. And
it is, and the truth is, and again, another lesson learned is I am never, whatever you write, everyone has their own choices. Everyone decides what books they read. My books, I mean, I know that we've had Louise Kennedy's. I don't know if you've seen it, Trespasses. I mean, I read that, and that is again on the background of the Troubles. My books are tough. They're a tough read. I mean, they really are a tough read. There's a wee bit of, well, there's quite a lot of swearing in it, but they're real real to life. There's a few, most of the sort of horrific events in it are based on true events, topped and tailed, for sensitive reasons. So, they'll keep you awake at night, but you'll learn. And ironically, it's which is really good, I guess. A lot of people who live in the Republic of Ireland, in Dublin and stuff, I've had comments from people who come back and said, I had no idea this stuff was going on. This was actually happening. You're 250 miles away or whatever. They might as well have been in a different country, So, but there's some. Don't get me wrong. There's some good stories in there, and I have got a good story if I can share it with you.
Yeah, please. I'd love to hear it.
Well, growing up, there was a thing called Project Children, which a man who was born in Cork, who went to New York when he was 16, and he joined the New York Police Department. And in the end, he ended up, a guy called Dennis Mullicky, and he ended up running or being part of the bomb disposal squad in New York Police Department. And he and his brothers were sitting, they would constantly watch the news. And for obvious reasons, he was a bomb disposal. He would watch a lot about the news. And to cut a long story short, him and his brother decided they would take two kids from one Catholic, one Protestant, because if you can understand, at that time, there was no opportunity for Catholic kids. Everything was still, schools were still, which are still today, there wasn't integrated schools, there were segregated schools. So these kids had no chance to meet. So the idea was to take them over to Greenwood Lake in North New York and give them 6 weeks holiday, stick them together and get them to know each other, separate from whatever. So they did that, and over 40 years, they took 23,000 kids from the north, from Belfast, Omagh, Derry, to the States. And he was actually nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize twice. He lost to Mother Teresa and Nelson Mandela. We can forgive him for that.
Tough competition.
Yeah, I know. But I've been asked to, I've used the storyline because I was really, I was quite annoyed that I was never asked to go to America. So I actually mentioned it in the, I sort of played around with it, but I mentioned it in the books. And then I met his daughter, who was over here traveling. And to cut a long story short, I've been asked to write his biography.
It's incredible. Oh my goodness.
That's a project for next year. And it's their 50th anniversary, 2025. I've been and I met Dennis last December, because obviously we needed to make sure that the synergy was there, and we got on well, and we did. And he's just one of those people that you'll just there's just something very special about him. So I'm catching up again with him this August to talk about how we're going to do it. But I mean, they're still bringing graduates over from Ireland, from the universities over to the States. So I mean, his story is huge, and it's a really wonderful story. So that's so it just shows you what can come from small things. So very excited about that.
That's so exciting. And you said, okay, so you've got two big things coming up now that I know about. So you've got, is it oh my gosh, it's Turmoil, Darkness, what's the
Light.
Light.
No, Light is done, and Hope is the final one.
Hope is the final one.
I'm sitting here, the books are pretty dark, so I'm sitting here writing, making things a lot more positive, leading up to the ceasefires in 1994, which obviously led on to the Good Friday Agreement in 1998. So
that's awesome.
So, yeah. So yes, I'm a busy bee.
You sure are. You've got, so that one, do you have an idea when that's going to come out? When we
That
should be looking
will be
forward
out.
to it?
I'm being actually kind to myself. Another lesson learned. I'm
Yes.
giving myself extra time this time because, it'll probably be out at the end of November.
That's incredible. And I mean, you can't push writing a book. That's crazy. Like that's a lot.
I know.
And then you've also got this biography that's 2025-ish.
25, yeah, because it's their 50th anniversary, and the BBC did a documentary about him, and then RTE as well. So he's just, I mean, that's going to be a real. It's actually, you know what, I'm really looking forward to that because it's going to be so different to what I'm doing at the moment.
Yeah.
Facts are there, and I can put them all together and tell a lovely story
Mhm.
without having to, I can give my imagination a bit of a break.
That'll be good. You can just kind
Yeah,
of connect the
yeah,
dots
yeah, exactly.
with some swirls instead of having to
Yeah,
make the dots.
yeah, yeah. So no, that's very exciting. So it just, I mean, my life's changed just by doing this. It really has. And, like yourself, you were saying earlier, I've met some amazing people,
Yeah.
and we all have the same common fears, and, the good days, the bad days. And when you see the books being bought and then you don't see any being bought, and the highs and the lows, it's a real roller coaster.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I feel like everything that does sound like a roller coaster. But okay, so I think we've got so many things to look forward to coming from you. We've got the festival in September, your book in
Yeah,
November, and then so far away, but
I know.
it'll pass so quickly too.
Oh, I know. I
Time
know.
doesn't exist. That's what I'm learning.
I'll tell you, it just disappears. It's scary.
Scary, scary, scary. Well, ending on a much better note than scary, scary. Thank you, Jane, for being
No,
on
thank
our
you.
podcast today.
Thank
It was
you.
so lovely talking to you.
And to you. Thank you.
Thank you. So, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. But if you're interested in attending the International Dublin Writers Festival, it will be running from September 15th to 17th at the Academy Plaza Hotel in Dublin. If you can't attend in person but still want to listen in and learn, we do have online sessions available. So please go to internationaldublinwritersfestival.com for more information. Bye for now.